He thought she was just a maid, until she gave his child the only thing that could keep him alive, her own body. The nursery was cold that morning. Though the August sun had long since risen over the hills of Greene County, the Whitmore estate, sealed in marble and silence, never quite let warmth in. At the center of the great house, past oil portraits and tall windows, the infant Noah Whitmore wailed from his cradle like a branch snapping in winter. Thin, high, exhausted. No one came. Downstairs the staff moved quietly. Polished brass, polished glass, polished silence. But Lena Wallace had already been upstairs. She had been upstairs since dawn. She stood now in the nursery, thin arms trembling slightly under the weight of the boy in her lap. He'd stopped crying. At last. Because he was feeding. Lena, wearing her uniform blouse unbuttoned, cradled Noah to her chest as if he had always been hers, her dark brown skin against his pale pink cheek. Her milk, not bought in a bottle but born of her own grief, gave him what no formula had managed for days: peace. She rocked slowly, humming an old hymn her grandmother used to sing after the cotton harvest. Come ye weary, heavy laden. The door slammed open. What the hell? Daniel Whitmore's voice cracked like a gunshot through stained glass. He crossed the room in seconds, eyes locked on the impossible scene. His only son, latched to the breast of a maid, a black maid, his dead wife's chair beneath her, his family's legacy in her arms. You filthy. His hand rose and struck her. Not hard enough to break skin, but hard enough to make her body jerk and the child cry again. Hard enough to say, you don't belong. Lena did not speak. She didn't even cover herself. She turned, shielding the baby's body with her own, quietly continuing to hum as blood gathered in her lip. Daniel stood over her, his chest heaving. His tie hung loose as if choking him from the inside. You think this is compassion? He growled. This is assault. Still, Lena did not flinch. She gently lifted the child back into the crib, hands steady. The baby's mouth searched the air, restless and hungry again. She kissed his forehead and walked past Daniel without a word. The door shut behind her like a final verdict. The house held its breath. Downstairs, Eleanor Whitmore, Daniel's mother, sat with her cup of chicory and glanced at the trembling butler who had witnessed everything from the hallway. A man too old to run, too loyal to speak. She was feeding him, he whispered, voice hoarse. He stopped crying. Eleanor's eyes narrowed. 3 hours later, the pediatrician confirmed what Eleanor feared. Noah had lost nearly a pound in 6 days. His body had begun rejecting the synthetic formula. The nurses had assumed it was colic. No one had checked. Except Lena. Daniel sat in silence in the drawing room as the doctor explained, eyes fixed on the fireplace. She saved his life, Eleanor said quietly, voice like cold silver. And you struck her. I didn't know. No, you didn't ask. She sipped her tea, unfazed. You never ask, Daniel. You only accuse. That night, Daniel found her in the servants' quarters, packing her single canvas bag. Her lip was still swollen. I'm leaving, Lena said softly. The child is safe now. Daniel opened his mouth, then closed it. I was wrong, he managed. I didn't ask for your apology, Lena replied. Only your permission to go. But something, perhaps the ache in his son's cry, perhaps the ghost of Claire in every corner of that house, held him in place. I want you to stay, he said. Not as a maid. Lena turned. Her eyes were tired, but steady. Then As what? He hesitated. As his guardian, if you'll accept it. The silence between them was long. Then Lena answered, voice even. On one condition. Yes. No more violence. She stepped forward. Not from you. Not from this house. Ever again. Daniel nodded, ashamed. She passed him, back straight, and climbed the stairs toward the nursery. In the cradle, Noah stirred. Lena lifted him once more. He settled instantly, little hand curling around her finger. She held him close and whispered something only the child could hear. It's okay now, little one. Someone listened. Later that week, the household staff changed their tone. The butler, Mr. Hardwick, offered to carry Lena's tray for the first time. The cook began slipping an extra biscuit into her morning napkin. Even the gardener nodded, a silent signal of alliance. But not everyone approved. Grace, the head housekeeper, whispered venom into every ear. That girl, she said. She crossed a line. She used her body to climb above her station. Lena said nothing. She cleaned the nursery in silence, fed the baby when no one else could, and watched as Daniel began returning home before dusk. One afternoon, Eleanor visited Lena in the nursery. Do you have children of your own? She asked quietly. Lena didn't look up. I had a son. He was born too early. I buried him last winter. Eleanor's breath caught. And yet, she murmured, you had milk. Grief doesn't follow the rules, ma'am. Sometimes it leaves you with a body still ready to love. Eleanor nodded. She walked over to the crib and looked down at Noah, sleeping peacefully. You did what no one else could, she said. That means something. Lena glanced at her. Does it mean enough? Eleanor didn't answer. But the next morning, Daniel brought Lena a key to the late Claire Whitmore's private study. She would want you to have it, he said. Lena took it without a word, then closed the door behind her. Outside, cicadas buzzed in the humid trees. The wind rustled the old magnolia leaves. Inside, a woman who had nothing, not even a child of her own, held the future in her arms. She had crossed a line, and there would be no going back. She saved his child. Now they call her a temptress. The gossip didn't arrive like thunder. It crept in, like mildew. Whispers curled through the Whitmore estate, latching onto teacups and doorknobs, folding into apron pockets and the linen drawer. She used herself. A woman like that. That kind of ambition doesn't come from nowhere. It was Grace, the housekeeper, who breathed life into the venom. Lena Wallace, she muttered over folded napkins, came here to clean floors. Now she's feeding the air like he was born from her. Don't tell me that's decent. Mrs. Alder from the laundry pursed her lips. I heard she has a dead baby of her own. Probably wants a replacement. Grace smiled with cold satisfaction. Maybe she found one. Lena heard none of this directly, but silence speaks. The way rooms quieted when she entered, the way tea was poured slower, the way Daniel never looked her in the eye. Daniel spent most mornings in the East Wing, buried in estate records. He claimed it was about taxes, but Eleanor knew better. She found him staring at a ledger one morning, its pages still blank. She kept your child alive, she said simply. Daniel didn't look up. It was unorthodox. It was human. He exhaled. The staff thinks she bewitched me. Have you looked at her, Daniel? Really looked? She's not trying to bewitch anyone. She's trying to survive. He said nothing. Eleanor placed a small envelope on his desk. Inside, a hospital discharge note from 2 years ago. The name, Lena Wallace. Diagnosis, postpartum hemorrhage. Neonate, stillborn. I asked around, Eleanor said. She buried her son alone, paid the funeral costs in quarters. Daniel closed his eyes. Later that afternoon, Lena stood by the garden window, baby Noah asleep in her arms. A light rain ticked the glass. Her body ached. Milk would run for a child she didn't birth. Grief would rise for a child she couldn't keep. Daniel entered quietly. You shouldn't be here, she said. Her voice wasn't angry, just tired. He stepped closer. I asked you to stay, and you did. I stayed for him, she whispered. I know. He reached into his coat and handed her a letter. What's this? Claire's handwriting. It was tucked in one of her books. Lena opened it with careful fingers. If something ever happens to me and I'm not here to feed him, find the nurse from the clinic, the one with the quiet eyes. Lena Wallace. I trust her. She listens. Lena read the line twice, then again. She knew me? Daniel nodded slowly. Apparently you met her once, a year before she died. She never told me. She remembered my name. She more than remembered. She trusted you. The rain thickened. Noah stirred. I want you to stay, Daniel said again. This time his voice didn't waver. Not as a nurse or a maid, just as Lena. Lena met his eyes. Then stop hiding me. He nodded. The next morning, at breakfast, Daniel stood at the head of the long oak table and cleared his throat. Lena Wallace is not a servant in this house. She is Noah's guardian and will be treated as such. Anyone who disrespects her disrespects me. Silence followed. Then the clink of a spoon. Grace looked up, smiling sweetly. Of course, sir. Outside, Lena fed Noah on the stone bench beneath the magnolia. Eleanor joined her, quietly. They will talk, Eleanor said. But talk has never raised a child. Lena chuckled. Talk never kept one alive either. Eleanor tilted her head. But silence can bury one. Lena nodded. She rocked Noah as the sun returned, and the wind carried away the last of Grace's whispers. Inside the house, behind a dusty bookshelf in Claire's study, something waited. A name, written in the margins. She opened a forgotten journal and found her name inside, written by a dead woman. Claire Whitmore's study had not been touched in over a year. Not since the ambulance had pulled away, its siren off, its back doors closed. Daniel had locked it after the funeral, a quiet declaration that some griefs were too sacred for sunlight. Now Lena stood at the threshold, the brass key still warm in her palm. The room smelled of lavender and old paper. Books lined every wall. Some still wore bookmarks. One lay open, spine cracked, mid-sentence, as if Claire had simply stepped out to answer the phone. Lena moved slowly, reverently. She didn't touch the piano, didn't open the jewelry box. But the bookshelf in the corner, half hidden behind a heavy armchair, caught her attention. She reached for a volume tucked deep in the shadows, a leather-bound journal, blank on the outside. Inside, neat cursive filled the pages. Thoughts, prayers, questions. Am I ready for another baby? Or am I just lonely? He says he'll be home for Noah's first birthday. I believe him. Lena flipped to the final pages, then froze. There, stuck to a page with yellowed tape, was a faded sticky note. On it, in quick handwriting, Lena Wallace, free clinic nurse. Ask about her. Remember the eyes. Lena pressed her fingers to the note. It was real. Her name. Written by a woman she barely remembered. A woman who, apparently, remembered her deeply. That evening, Daniel sat with Eleanor in the drawing room. Rain tapped the windows, as it always seemed to when memory returned. Claire never spoke about other women, Daniel said. She kept things close. But she did say once, when we were at the clinic, that a nurse had offered to hold her hand during a panic attack. Wouldn't leave her side. She said it was the first time she felt safe. That was Lena, Eleanor said softly. Daniel nodded. She was going to hire her privately, Eleanor added. But then Noah came early. Claire got sick. Everything happened at once. Daniel pulled the journal from his coat, turned it to the sticky note. She remembered. Even through the fog, she remembered. Lena sat in the nursery that night with Noah curled against her chest. The rain had stopped. She whispered to the baby, "Your mother was brave. She saw something in me, before I even knew who I was." She held the journal in her lap. The pages seemed to hum. "We're not done yet, Claire," she said into the quiet. 2 days later, while organizing the books in the study, Lena found a second journal wedged behind a loose plank. This one was older. The ink faded. But one line caught her eye. "Daniel doesn't know, but I met someone at the pond today. A boy. He said his name was Thomas." Lena blinked. Thomas? She flipped through the journal. There were 2 more entries mentioning Thomas. One described him humming. Another said, "He shouldn't be there, but he is, watching, always watching." Lena brought the journal to Eleanor. The old woman read in silence, then closed the book. "You found the name. Who is he?" Eleanor looked out the window. Her voice, when it came, was barely more than a breath. "Thomas Whitmore." "Daniel's brother?" Eleanor nodded. "I've never heard anyone speak of him." "You wouldn't have, because Daniel doesn't know, not the whole truth." Lena leaned in. "What happened to him?" Eleanor sighed. "He died, officially, but not completely." She stood. "There are places in this house that no one looks anymore. If you want to know what happened, start at the pond." That night, Lena walked the estate path in the moonlight. She passed the orchard, the stone bench, the magnolia tree, and found the pond. Still, dark, unmoving. She stepped closer. Her feet sank into the wet grass. At the edge, something caught her eye. A smooth stone, partly hidden beneath moss and dirt. She knelt, brushed it clean. T.W. The initials were carved by hand. Crude, but deliberate. Not a gravestone. Not exactly. But a marker. Something had been buried. Or someone. Lena stood, heart pounding. The wind picked up, carrying the scent of rain and magnolia. She looked back at the house. Some ghosts lived behind doors. Others waited in the water, and some wrote names in the margins, hoping to be remembered. This one had found her. They said he drowned, but Lena found his name carved in stone. The morning after she found the initials, Lena returned to the pond. She brought no tools, Just a thermos of tea, a cloth, and a notebook. The stone still sat there, half sunken, moss regrowing around the grooves where she had wiped it clean. T.W. Lena sat beside it. The silence of the water pressed against her ears. It didn't feel like a place where someone had drowned. It felt like a place someone had been forgotten. She jotted notes in the margins of her journal. Thomas Whitmore. Claire knew of him. Eleanor confirmed his name, but Daniel had never spoken of a brother, not once. Later that day, as the house slept during the heavy noonday heat, Lena found Eleanor alone in the solarium. "You were right," Lena said. "There's a stone at the pond. T.W. Did you put it there?" Eleanor didn't answer at first. "I used to visit him," she said finally. "Before they moved him. Before they gave up." "Moved him where?" Eleanor's hands tightened around the edge of her teacup. "When Thomas was 6, he stopped speaking. He wouldn't eat unless it was a blue bowl. He screamed if someone touched his hair. Back then, we didn't call it anything. Not autism, not sensory disorder. We called it shame." Lena sat very still. Eleanor continued. "Daniel's father couldn't tolerate it. Sent him to a private home, a quiet place in the woods. We were told it was best. And then? We were told he drowned. A year later." But that wasn't true. Eleanor looked away. "I don't know. They never showed a body, just a closed casket." Lena's voice trembled. "He was 6. He was brilliant in his own way," Eleanor whispered. "He once lined up every spoon in the house by the reflection angle of the chandelier. No one taught him that. He just knew." Lena's throat ached. "What was the name of the facility?" "I can't remember, but there may be records in the old office. The one in the West Wing. The part of the house no one uses." That night, Lena lit a candle and crept through the west hallway. Dust blanketed everything. 1,000 closed doors. Echoes of footsteps never returned. She found the office behind a warped oak door. Inside, ledgers, receipts, boxes of correspondence. It took hours, but in a drawer beneath yellowed tax files, she found it. A single entry, handwritten. Monthly stipend for T.W., Shady Pines Center for Special Youths, $800 month. The date, April 1989. But Thomas was declared dead in 1987. The payments continued until 1994. Lena's hand shook. She took the file and brought it straight to Eleanor. Together they confronted Daniel. He sat motionless as Lena laid out the paper. "Your brother didn't die when you were told. They kept paying the home for years." Daniel stared at the ledger. "I don't remember him." "Not well," he said. "I thought he was imaginary, a story. I have one photograph, a boy standing by a tree. He never spoke." Eleanor stepped forward. "We failed him, all of us." Lena whispered, "Then we must find him." Daniel nodded. "We'll hire someone. Discreet. We'll trace the payments." "There's something else," Lena said. "I want to go with them." "Why?" "Because I know what it feels like to be erased." That night, back in the nursery, Lena held Noah and read aloud a passage from Claire's journal. "There are 2 kinds of silence. One that soothes, one that smothers." Lena looked at the baby in her arms. "We're going to find your uncle," she said softly. "We'll bring his name back." And outside, beyond the nursery walls, a wind stirred the pond. Not a ghost, just a whisper. "I remember. The payments didn't stop after his death." And the name they found wasn't Thomas. The man Daniel hired was quiet, mid-50s, former Air Force intelligence. His name was Briggs. He wore corduroy and kept his questions short. "I'll need copies of everything," he said, "and access to the estate's outbound correspondence from 1986 through 1994. "Take whatever you need," Daniel said. Lena stood in the corner of the drawing room, arms folded. Briggs looked at her. "You've got good instincts," he said. "You were right to doubt the ledger. Nobody pays a dead boy's home for 7 years. 3 days passed, then a call. Briggs returned with files in hand and a look on his face like a man who had walked through fire. "I found him," he said simply. Daniel stood. "Where?" Briggs handed over a black and white photo, a young man in a clinic hallway pushing a mop, head bowed, shoulders hunched. "Name on record is Eli Warren, first admitted in 1985 as Theo Warren. Birth year and identifiers match Thomas Whitmore." Eleanor sat down slowly. "They changed his name. Likely to avoid legal responsibility. The home was shut down in 1995 after a whistleblower claimed illegal transfers of disabled youth to state-run adult clinics. Most families never knew." Lena stared at the photo. "He looks tired." Briggs nodded. "He's been in and out of private shelters. The last address I found, he's living above a church in Sweetwater, Tennessee. Pastor vouches for him. Keeps to himself. Paints." "He paints?" Eleanor whispered. "Obsessively, mostly landscapes. But there's a series he hides behind the altar. I saw one. It's a picture of a pond, with a gravestone, marked T.W. Lena covered her mouth. They drove out at dawn, Daniel, Lena, and Briggs. Sweetwater was small. 2 stoplights, a diner, a post office with no digital scanner. The church sat at the top of a hill, modest, brick-faced. Behind it, a slope led down to a garden where bees wandered through lavender. Inside, the pastor, a kind man named Ames, welcomed them. "He won't speak at first," Ames said, "but he knows you're coming. I showed him the photo of the pond stone." They found Theo, Eli, sitting in a back pew, eyes forward. Lena sat beside him. He didn't turn. She placed the photo in his lap. "Do you remember?" He blinked, then nodded. Daniel stepped forward. His voice cracked. "Thomas?" Theo turned, slowly, then whispered, "You used to call me Button." Daniel fell to his knees. They spent hours in the chapel. Theo spoke in fragments. He remembered blue bowls. He remembered Eleanor singing through the door. He remembered Claire. "She brought me bread once, when the men forgot to feed me. She said I didn't deserve a cage." Eleanor wept. Theo reached into his coat and pulled out a sketch. It was Lena, standing by the pond. "I saw you once, before the house changed." Lena touched the edge of the drawing. "Do you want to come home?" she asked. He looked up. "No more cages?" "No," Daniel said. "Only doors and light." They returned to Whitmore Estate that night. The nursery was quiet. Theo walked slowly through the halls. He paused by a window. Then he said, "It's the same moon, just not the same people." Lena whispered, "Not anymore." Later, in the attic, Lena found a locked trunk. Inside, drawings. Hundreds. Most were water-stained, but one was dry, perfectly preserved. It showed a small boy in a blue sweater, and a woman in a red shawl holding out her hand. At the bottom, in the corner, scratched faintly, "Remember me, T.W." He hadn't spoken a full sentence in years until he saw her face. The first few nights, Theo didn't sleep indoors. He made a bed of blankets on the nursery floor. Noah reached for him instinctively, his tiny hand curling into Theo's sweater as if drawn by memory. Theo never flinched, just hummed softly under his breath. A pattern of notes, 7, always 7, over and over. Lena sat by the doorway those nights, watching, listening. "Did someone teach you that melody?" she asked once. Theo didn't look at her. She did. Claire. His voice was thin but sure. She said if I forgot words, I could remember sound. By the 5th day, Eleanor asked if he wanted to return to his old room. Theo shook his head. "No more ceilings. I like the sky." So they moved a cot to the sunroom. Every morning, Theo rose before dawn and painted, mostly sky, sometimes faces, and once, a woman holding a child. Not Claire, not Eleanor, but Lena. She found it tucked beneath his stack of canvases. He didn't stop her. "Why me?" she asked. Theo's reply was soft. "You looked. You didn't look away." Daniel tried to apologize, many times. Each time, Theo held up a hand. "I don't want sorry. I want truth." So Daniel opened the old boxes, the ones his father had locked up. Together they went through the letters, the records, the files. One night, Theo found a photo of himself as a boy, standing by the pond with a metal toy airplane. He smiled. "I remember this, right before they took it away. Said I couldn't have dreams." Lena put her hand on his. "You kept them anyway." That same week, Theo surprised them all. He joined Eleanor in the music room. She sat at the piano, hands trembling. Theo touched the keys, softly, then played. The same 7-note melody. Eleanor wept. "I used to play that for you," she whispered. "Every Tuesday." Theo nodded. "I know." The estate began to shift. Grace kept her distance. The staff, once divided, grew quiet in the best way. No more whispers. No more turning away. One afternoon, Theo came into the drawing room holding a handful of dried lavender. "I want to build something," he said. "What kind of something?" Daniel asked. Theo looked to Lena. "A garden. For Claire. And for the others. The ones who were forgotten." Lena nodded slowly. "We'll plant their names in the earth." By mid-autumn, they began digging near the pond. Theo chose the spot, not far from the TW stone. He marked off a space with blue ribbon and drew plans on thick paper, paths, stone benches, a sculpture in the center, 2 hands reaching out from broken stone. Daniel raised an eyebrow. "Is it meant to be Claire?" Theo shook his head. "It's anyone who ever screamed and wasn't heard." That night, Lena brought out Claire's final journal. Theo opened it reverently. Inside, a letter never sent. To the boy with the quiet eyes. If you're reading this, I hope someone found you. I hope the stars still matter. And I hope you're not afraid to be seen anymore. You deserve to be seen. Theo folded the paper. I remember her, even when they tried to make me forget. He looked at Lena. I remember you too. From the pond. Before the house changed. Lena smiled gently. I thought I imagined you. He shook his head. You didn't. I was there. And for the first time, his voice didn't tremble. It rang clear. He remembered. The letters were never sent. but someone made sure they were never destroyed. Autumn deepened. The leaves along the estate turned copper and rust. With each gust of wind, a little more of the old world let go. One morning, while gathering supplies for the memorial garden, Lena asked the gardener where the estate's old tools had been kept. He pointed to the attic. "Watch your step," he warned. "That floor up there remembers everything." The attic was cold. Dust danced in shafts of light. Stacked trunks, forgotten canvases, books with mildew along the spines. Lena moved slowly, fingers grazing over old nameplates and broken furniture. Behind a warped cabinet, she found a wooden box. It wasn't locked. Inside, letters. Dozens. Tied in careful bundles with red thread. Some addressed simply, Mama. Others, Button. One simply read, "The One Who Listens." The handwriting was shaky, the paper thin. Dates spanning 10 years. She opened one. "They say if I'm good, I can see the stars again. But it's always the ceiling, and I can't remember your voice anymore. I hum to keep from disappearing." The letters were from Theo, never mailed, never even read. That evening, Lena laid the letters out on the long table in the study. Eleanor stood beside her, hand over her mouth. "I thought they were destroyed," she whispered. "Your grandfather, he ordered them burned." "But someone kept them," Lena said. Theo entered quietly. His eyes fell on the letters. He froze. "These are mine." Lena nodded. "Yes." He picked up one, held it close. "I thought they never got out." "They didn't," Eleanor said, ashamed. "But someone disobeyed. Someone believed in you." Theo looked to the ceiling, then to Eleanor. "Was it you?" Eleanor's voice cracked. "No. It should have been." Daniel joined them. He read 2 letters, then walked away in silence. Later, Lena found him in the old nursery, sitting in Claire's chair. "She read some of them," he said, "before she died. I remember her crying with a box of letters in her lap. I didn't ask." He looked at Lena. "I never asked anything." Lena knelt beside him. "You're asking now." That week, Daniel contacted a sculptor. The garden centerpiece took shape, 2 weathered hands carved from reclaimed wood, reaching toward each other but never touching. Theo picked the inscription. "If anything happens to me, I remember the man in the gray suit." Lena paused. "What does that mean?" Theo's eyes darkened. "He ran the home. Always wore gray. Smelled like bleach. He made me forget my name." Eleanor stepped forward. "He was the psychiatrist, Dr. Connell, connected to the council. His son's in office now." Lena felt it like a stone in her chest. "Then we need to speak the names, out loud." The memorial garden opened quietly at first. Neighbors wandered in. Children touched the sculpture. No signs, no fanfare, just the sound of wind in lavender. But the silence didn't last. One morning, protesters appeared at the estate gates. Signs, cameras. A powerful man in a suit gave a statement. "This story is false. That sculpture is defamation." Daniel stepped forward. Press gathered at his feet. "It's not false," he said. "And it's not about revenge. It's about memory." Lena stood beside him, Noah in her arms. Behind them, Theo opened the box of letters and began to read, one by one. To the world. And for the first time since childhood, the house was not silent. It listened. The memorial was meant to honor the forgotten. But power doesn't forget what it buried. The garden bloomed through October. Theo's sculpture stood solemn under a maple tree, flanked by lavender rose and white daisies. People came quietly. Teachers, nurses, war veterans, a former housemaid with trembling hands. They sat on the benches and read the names carved in soft stone. Thomas Whitmore, Claire Whitmore, the boy with the blue bowl, the girl in the red shawl, names that weren't in any obituary but lived in memory. Then came the pushback. First, a letter, formal, cold, from Councilman Edwin Connell II to Whitmore Estate, unauthorized public memorial. The sculpture recently erected constitutes potential libel against medical professionals and institutions of historic standing. We request immediate removal and full cessation of related media. Daniel read the letter aloud in the parlor. Theo stared at the floor. "He's the son of the doctor," Eleanor said. "Connell Sr., the one who ran the home." "He's protecting legacy," Lena said. "Not truth." 2 days later, strangers arrived with cameras, posed questions designed to corner. "Why did you bring a mentally ill man into the house with a baby? Is this about inheritance? What are you really trying to say with that sculpture?" Lena stood on the steps, Noah asleep on her chest. She said nothing. Until a man stepped forward, older, weathered, wearing a patch on his jacket that read, "State Hospital Orderly, Retired." He handed her an envelope. "I shouldn't be here," he said, "but I saw him, the boy, the artist. I know what they did to him." Then he vanished. Inside the envelope, photocopies, medical files, incident reports, dated 1987 to 1991. One was a treatment plan for a patient labeled TW. Another was a medication log, and the most damning, a note scribbled by hand. Claire Whitmore came again, refused sedation, said she'd go to the press, next visit to be denied. Lena held the paper like fire. That night she read it aloud at the dinner table. Theo stared at the handwriting. "She tried," he whispered. "She really tried." Daniel reached for his glass, hand shaking. They silenced her. Legally. Through medicine. "No," Eleanor said. "Through fear." Lena looked around the table. "Then we tell it. All of it. With names, with dates. We show the town what the silence cost." They contacted a local reporter, Elise Carter, retired but still sharp. She listened for 2 hours in the garden. Then she said, "This isn't a story. This is a reckoning." She asked for artifacts. Lena gave her the ledger, the letters, the sculpture plans, the journal, the sealed envelope. Theo gave her a painting. The pond, lit by moonlight, with a shadow sitting by the water. He titled it, "Where the Silence Ends." The article went live 2 weeks later. Buried Voices, the Forgotten Children of Shady Pines. There were photos, testimonials, legal records, and one quote from Lena Wallace. "We don't seek vengeance. We seek memory, because no child should disappear in plain sight." The town split. Some called it brave. Others called it betrayal. Connell's office threatened to sue, then retracted, then stalled. A court date was mentioned. Daniel hired attorneys. Theo kept painting. And Lena kept feeding the baby. Life, despite it all, moved forward. One morning, Daniel entered the nursery with a small box. Inside, an old recorder, Claire's. "I found it in her writing desk," he said, "after the article came out." He pressed play. Claire's voice, soft, tired,
filled the room. If they hear this, it means I didn't make it. But maybe Lena did. Maybe she stayed. If she did, please, listen to her. She sees what I see. She loves without looking away. Lena closed her eyes. Outside, the memorial rustled in the wind. Inside, the past had spoken. And someone, finally, had listened.
Claire didn't die naturally. Lena found the file that proved it. The house was quiet when Lena and Daniel left for the sanitarium. The sun had not yet risen. Theo stood by the nursery window, one hand on the glass. Eleanor stood beside him, holding Noah. There were no goodbyes, just a silence that felt like a prayer. The drive took 3 hours. The sanitarium, once called Shady Pines Medical Retreat, was now a state-run archive for medical records. Most of the original staff had died or disappeared, but a few remained, including one, an elderly clerk named Ruth, who had been Claire's friend once. She met them at the back entrance. "I don't have long," Ruth whispered. "They know someone's been asking." She led them down a narrow hall to a locked archive room. Her badge beeped. The door clicked open. "This drawer," she said. "Under W." Inside, file folders the color of dry bone. Lena pulled the one labeled Whitmore, Claire E. She opened it. The file wasn't long. It included an intake form, notes in different handwriting, one line under recommended treatment. Mild sedative to address hysteria, observation required. Then, incident reports, dated 3 days before Claire's death. Patient expressed intent to contact press. Escalated behavior. Administered increased dosage of chlorpromazine under supervisory order. No family notified. And finally, a page clipped to the back. Not standard form. A nurse's journal entry. She said she felt like her body didn't belong to her anymore. She was slurring words. Said, "Tell them I never stopped fighting." The next day, her bed was empty. Daniel's hands clenched. Lena turned to Ruth. "Why wasn't this in the legal review?" Ruth shook her head. "They moved files, redacted others, but I kept that page. I knew it mattered." Daniel spoke quietly. "You could lose your job." Ruth nodded. "I already lost my friend." Back at the estate, they gathered in the study. Theo read the nurse's journal aloud. When he reached Claire's final words, he stopped. "I remember her saying that," he whispered. "Through the door. One night, when I couldn't sleep." Lena folded the report. "She didn't die of illness. She was silenced. Slowly. Legally." Eleanor's voice was cold. "Then we unsilence her. Loudly." They returned to Elise Carter, the retired journalist. "This is enough for a federal inquiry," she said. "If you're ready." Daniel didn't hesitate. "We are." The follow-up story ran front page. This time, national. Sealed Histories, The Quiet Erasure of Claire Whitmore. It included quotes from the nurse's journal, legal scans, the sculpture, the archive drawer, and a photo of Lena holding the report, standing in the garden beside Theo and Noah. Underneath, the caption, "Truth doesn't die, it waits." That week, mail arrived by the dozens, from strangers, mothers, veterans, former staff from other homes. One letter read, "I remember Claire. I was a patient. She held my hand during a panic attack. Please tell her son she saved someone." Theo read the letter twice, then painted a new piece. 2 hands, one open, one scarred, reaching through water toward a sky full of stars. He named it, What They Tried to Hide. The town changed after that, not overnight, but slowly, like frost thawing from a field. The councilman never responded. The state launched a quiet review, and in the garden, beside the names carved in stone, a new plaque was added. For Claire, who never stopped fighting. Lena stood before it one evening, Noah asleep on her shoulder, Theo beside her, silent. And as the wind moved through the lavender, she whispered, "We found you." She wasn't part of the family, but she became its voice, its healer, its keeper of truth. The garden opened to the public one last time in early spring. A gentle ceremony. No speeches, just music, soft cello drifting through the air. Lavender was beginning to bloom again. Theo had scattered his final sketches among the benches, taped under each with quiet reverence. Noah, now walking, toddled along the stone path. He stopped at the sculpture, looked up at the hands reaching through broken wood, and reached out his own tiny one. Lena stood nearby, watching. She wore a plain dress, no makeup, no announcement, just presence. Later that day, Eleanor handed Lena a worn envelope. "It was with Claire's personal effects," she said. "I couldn't bring myself to open it until now." Inside, Claire's will. A single amendment scribbled in blue ink. "If anything happens to me, I leave custody of my story, my journals, letters, voice, to Lena Wallace. She saw what I saw. She knew what I knew. She listened." Lena folded the letter with care, not as possession, but as vow. That evening, as the sun set behind the magnolia, Lena sat with Theo and Daniel on the back porch. "I think I'm going to start a program," she said, "for girls like me, for boys like him, who never got to speak." Daniel nodded. "The estate will fund it. No discussion." Theo smiled faintly. "We'll teach painting and remembering." Weeks passed. Then a package arrived. No return address, just a single photo inside. Claire and a man. The back read, "The first time she screamed." Lena stared at it for a long time, then went to the west wing of the estate, the sealed side. She broke the lock with Theo's help. Behind the door, a small room, soundproofed, windowless. Lena found a rusted medical chair, belts still attached, and in a corner, a box of torn letters, most addressed to Claire. Eleanor found her there hours later. "I never came back in," she whispered. "I told myself it was better not to know." Lena rose. "It's time we tell everything." The next article went global. It included a photo of the sealed room, the chair, the final note. The caption beneath Claire's portrait read, "She told the truth," and they called it hysteria. On the first anniversary of the garden, they held one final vigil. Noah, now 2, toddled through the garden again. He stopped at the base of the sculpture and looked to Lena. "Mama Lena, what's truth look like?" She knelt beside him, wrapped an arm around his shoulders. "It looks like this," she said softly. "This, right here." She touched the stone. The hands that never gave up. The names no one could erase. The voices that someone, somewhere, finally listened to. The garden remained open. People came from all over. But Lena never gave tours. She just sat on the bench and listened. This story was never about heroes. It was about listeners, the ones who stood quietly at the edge of other people's pain and stayed. Lena didn't fight with noise. She fought with presence, with a baby in her arms, with grief still fresh in her bones, with milk meant for a child she had already buried. And still, she gave. Truth is not always loud. Sometimes, it's a letter never sent, a sketch hidden in an attic, a child's hand reaching toward broken stone. Thank you for watching, for remembering what so many tried to forget, for listening. Some names never made it into history books, but they made it into gardens, into hands, into hearts, and now into yours.